you start out with representing what's the olfactory segment versus the respiratory segment.
Right.
Okay, and of course the olfactory segment is only on the superior nasal concus. So you'd want to have at least part of your drawing to show the nasal cavities. Something like this. In fact, the gross juxtaposition and gross organization, the nasal cavities consist of two basic parts, and they are the vestibule and the cavities proper. And then in the cavities proper, you have these conchae, and the superior one has the olfactory part, but the rest of them are all respiratory segment.
Okay.
Now, what does respiratory segment mean?
Conditions the air.
Conditions the air. Warm, humidify, filter.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So there's an exhibit in the selected topics that's been there for 20 years that's drawn to show these two areas for their histology. But then there are some other figures that get into especially the olfactory segment for what these olfactory neurons look like.
Mm-hmm.
That we have these sustentacular cells that can degrade odors. That could be a figure right there. There are figures, the Bowman's gland, which is a compound tubuloacinar gland that releases the olfactory solvent.
Mm-hmm.
So the histology would include this figure, this figure. Here's the one that I talked about that's been in there for about 20 years. That's this one. Okay, and when I drew this for the class, in my mind was the slide I had up here that the classes never got to see. It's a section through the superior nasal concus where one side has the olfactory segment and the other side has the respiratory segment. Now, probably better to say seromucous gland than just say mucus gland here, because sero is involved with humidifying, mucus with filtering. But then we have kinds of cells: goblet cells, ciliated cells, basal cells. Up here, the ciliated cells have stereocilia. And of course, the sustentacular release enzymes for degrading odors. And then, if we cut through our gland here, the Bowman's gland, this is for the olfactory solvent. This is a mucoperiosteum on both sides. So labeling tunics would be maybe something to think about. These are the phyllolfactoria that I talk about through here a little bit. That all those holes that we see in the cribriform plate, we learned the skull earlier, accommodate groups, what are basically nerve fascicles of about 20 nerves each. But of course, we're looking at up to, and the figure I show is an overhead. I changed this to 12,000.
12,000 glomeruli?
Wait a minute, where is it here? Oh, no, right here. 12 million, I mean.
12 million?
Right here. There's 12 million neurons, not 1 million.
Okay.
And then they basically, via those phyllolfactoria, go into groupings that feed into 1,000 different glomeruli. And then this figure here is looking at a glomerulus, 3 of them here. And then, of course, like the eye, where we had the horizontal cells and the amacrine cells, and I asked in that essay, how do we modulate impulses for vision to go to the brain? That's what's going on here. Of course, when I showed this, I had written on here which of these promote and which of these inhibit the signals. And these two promote, this one inhibits the signals.
Okay.
And then I commented also that there are 2 places after that in the brain it goes to. It goes to the mammillary body for reflex. Something stinks and you kind of make a funny face or you turn your head away. That's the olfactory reflex of the mammillary body, but then you start figuring out what the smell is. That's the olfactory cortex of the brain. Okay?
Okay.
So I would start out with a drawing like this. Juxtaposition says, well, maybe I'll show the sphenoidal sinus over here. Maybe I'll show the hard palate down here. Maybe I'll show the nasal pharynx with the eustachian tube. I'll draw the vestibule. Okay. And then the gross anatomy means let's label these conchae. Now, actually part of this story also is the nasal septum. 58, the answer to this was respiratory segment. Because the most of the surface area is respiratory segment.
It was respiratory
so
segment?
Plate of ethmoid or vomer bone.
Because I asked Ty if you were talking about the bottom part or the top part, and he said the top part.
Well, you see where the 58 is? That's on the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. And that's respiratory segment. That is the top part, because the bottom's vomer.
Oh, I thought it was the top part, like the olfactory segment would be
here's
above.
Here's the vomer down here. Here's the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid up here. This blue is septal cartilage. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the drawing part of that.
So
if you want to work on it this weekend, we can look at it on
this.
Monday. What?
So draw that and then draw that, like kind of
Well,
like with the eye.
yeah, this
kind
could
of
be.
like
You know,
off
you
of it.
might either use the whole page or maybe continue on to the next page. But whose paper is this? You might be able to do all but the histology in one drawing, where over here we've got the vestibule. Okay, and then if we follow that up to the bridge of the nose, and then we'll look into the nasal cavities here, and up here you've got the superior nasal conchus, and then you got the middle, and then you got the inferior. And then back here, as you go into the nasopharynx, you've got the opening for the eustachian tube. Of course, there's a shelf of bone here. This is where that cribriform plate is. The olfactory bulb of the brain sits there. So when we talk about these glomeruli, the nerves are going into the bulb for the glomeruli. And then, of course, down here, where the vomer would be, coming down in here, is going to be on top of the hard palate. So you got a maxillary, and you got a palatine bone here. And then, of course, with that, and you got teeth, don't you? Right there. So that's starting to show juxtaposition. And then you just start labeling the conchae: superior, middle, inferior. Okay, and you can even draw in up here, maybe with shading or something, that this is the olfactory segment. Okay, and the rest of it is respiratory segment. And then what you can do is maybe arrow down. Actually, this is easier than I thought. Maybe what we're going to do here is we're going to take an area kind of like this, and we're going to arrow down on one side here where the superior nasal conchus is. You're going to draw the olfactory segment, and the other side you're going to draw the respiratory segment, just like that. Okay? That's not too bad.
What about the essay course?
That probably is the easiest drawing.
And the innervation.
Now, for this question, does it say innervation?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, we got a little bit more to do then. I guess over here you're going to have to put something like sphenopalatine foramen. Let's see, we got to have the olfactory, so that's going to be there. Sphenopalatine, and then back here we're talking about the stylomastoid, and we're looking at the facial nerve. And actually, let's see here, facial. Actually, let's call this one here the. We got sphenopalatine. We don't need stylo. We'll call this one here foramen rotundum, and this one here will be sphenopalatine, and then this one here will be cribriform plate or olfactory foramina, whatever you want. And so 7 basically comes here, 5 comes here, and 1 is exiting here. Those are the 3 nerves that innervate, and you just have to show. In fact, you might just take it to the histology, because when you draw your cells here, okay, maybe this is the respiratory epithelium, you're going to have these brush cells. This is all in the notes. Brush cells deal with sense mechanoreception. But then maybe down here you've got seromucous glands. How would you color those differently? And those would be facial innervation. And then up here you've got these hair cells. We're drawing them out here with their little vesicles. They kind of go out like a wagon wheel, the stereocilia, and then the nerve going away in this, what would be the fila olfactorium here, is going to take you to there. So that would be your olfactory story, something like that. Okay? Now, one hint I gave students that were filling that out, this thing. On the digestive one, it says draw stomach, small intestine, and colon to demonstrate juxtaposition and gross structural organization. So, you know, that's what I think you could probably do a similar story here with that. We've got the stomach, okay, and then what does it say? Small intestine. Well, of course, the duodenum is the big one here, but maybe you've got your coils here for your jejunum and your ileum here, and then it says large intestine, right? All right, so maybe you've got the ileum coming out here, and then we've got the cecum, and we've got the ascending colon. We can bring it across something like this. Okay, descending colon, sigmoid, and then rectum. Okay, now, juxtaposition means, well, what are some landmarks that tells us where this is? Okay, well, maybe over here you draw the spleen. Maybe here you've got the left and right lobes of the liver. Okay. Maybe you could say, okay, kind of hidden down here would be a kidney. Something like that. And then, you know, maybe for the rectum here, you might just say, if you wanted to use a female, you might say, okay, here's the uterus, and here's the urinary bladder. Or you could have the pelvis going across here, and Jenna and Lacey were working on that or something. Again, I'm going to let you figure that out. I mean, you could put here for the a cardiac part of the stomach, we can have a fundic part of the stomach, we can have a corpic part. Okay, indicate over here that you got jejunum, over here you got ileum. We know the duodenum has a primary, a secondary, a third part, and a fourth part, something like that. And then the histology, you may want to go to another page, but this is where this comes in. Boy, have I helped you a lot. There's the stomach, there's the small intestine, there's the large intestine.
So just draw, you know?
Now, does it say functional histology?
Yeah.
So try to indicate something in here. We know the digestive system has these three basic functions: the breakdown, the absorption, feces formation. Maybe if you write here Brunner's gland, you might say mucosal lubrication. Stomach here, you were labeling the three layers, the muscularis externa, you might say mixing wave. Gastric gland, who wrote this? I didn't get the pyloric. Who's this? This is a gastric gland, you might just say proteolytic enzyme or pepsin protein breakdown or something like that. Okay?
And
So the fact that I gave you that makes that question pretty easy for the drawing.
the nerve supply to all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Isn't that a lot?
Oh, I don't know. It's more.
What's the essay?
Well, you want to do the nerve first? Here's what I'm going to tell you. One thing is parasympathetic is craniosacral.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you to think here a little bit. Okay, craniosacral means S2, S4, and vagus. Okay, sympathetic, we have to think about where we're going to put our celiac ganglion and our splanchnic nerves coming in, which is going to, you'll have to go back to the notes. We know that this is T9 through maybe T11. Okay, down here we're going to have the superior mesenteric ganglion going. In fact, let's just say this one here is foregut. That's splanchnic nerve. The one here that is T11 and T12 is going to be midgut. So you have to define on here where's foregut, midgut, and hindgut.
Okay.
And then
Hindgut's up here, right?
If we do T12 to L2, okay, that's the sympathetic ganglion for hindgut. And I asked you on the test today, I had a line go like that, and I said, what's the significance of the line in here?
The hindgut starts there.
And the midgut is this way, the hindgut is that way. Okay?
But
Right.
the innervation for the hindgut is way down here?
Well, if we're looking, this is sympathetic. This is thoracolumbar.
So it's basically for like peristalsis.
Now,
and
when
stuff?
you get to the hindgut for parasympathetic, it's the S2, S4. Vagal is foregut and midgut.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
What I did was I pulled some of the very last lecture material from what we had right before the third written. Once we have the nervous system story and the blood supply, it's kind of neat to relate it to these later systems like digestion and respiration, urinary, and so on. So.
And for the second half of the first one, how much do you expect us to write on about that?
All right,
That's
so
like
let's go on there. Discuss the tongue. Well, let's just do this. Usually when I grade these, and each part has a different weight.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Drawings usually aren't more than about 10 to 12 points of the 25. So we've got 1 a tongue, 2 salivary glands. Of course, with salivary glands, we have 3 major, and then we have our minor. Okay, 1 kind of minor. And then it says teeth. Okay, so that's going to, I don't know why I drew that line there. That'd be 3. Now, 1, 2, 3, tongue, salivary glands, teeth, juxtaposition. So you're going to have to think about extrinsic muscles. You're going to have to think about root versus base, sulcus terminalis, and then for salivary glands, parotid means near the ear. I asked you the submandibular on a bonus today by showing you the submandibular fossa on a mandible over here. Okay, and then teeth. In the notes, we talk a little bit about, juxtaposition. I would just, we know that there's a maxillary and a mandibular arcade. Those are the only bones in the skull that have teeth.
Right.
Okay? That probably gets you through juxtaposition. Gross structural organization, there are kinds of teeth. Incisors, canines. We're looking at premolars and molars. When we get to the tongue, maybe we're looking at the kinds of papillae. Filiform, fungiform. You might go back. You might, for this one here, and part of it, go back to the accessory gland extra credit you just got back. That shows teeth, salivary glands, and the tongue story on it.
Oh, right.
Okay? True, it's an essay, but you can pull information out of there. And the innervation, there's an exhibit for that. Taste is facial nerve in the body of the tongue, glossopharyngeal in the root. When you burn yourself in hot peppers, that's trigeminal. You move your tongue, that's hypoglossal. Okay, that was all in the lectures. And the functional histology, then I would go to this, and a whole bunch of figures you have. Not this one, but the blue one for the accessory organs.
Right.
There are 6 parts to a tooth. How would you describe the functional histology of enamel and dentin and pulp, and the functional histology of a taste bud on the tongue?
So would you recommend doing that one in like a table with like
Yeah, you could. Yeah,
table.
Yep. Okay?
Okay.
Everybody want to do those 2?
Yeah.
Anybody want to do something else? You work on it this weekend? I'm here Monday, Tuesday.